I think we'll go ahead and get started. A little after 7 o'clock on such a beautiful evening, we'll go ahead and get started, and maybe we'll still have some time to enjoy the nice evening. I want to welcome everybody to the July 12th edition of the Speaker Forum for the Comprehensive Plan. Those of you that have attended these in the past, I think you're recognizing that they're really an important facet of the Comprehensive Plan update, a real educational tool. And this evening we're very excited to have Rick Harrison from the Twin Cities with us this evening to talk about urban design and different ways of land use planning for residential development in the community. He's an author, planner, and the author of Prefurbia, and I want to introduce Mr. Rick Harrison.
Hi. Thank you. Thank you. I just realized that there's no battery power to the laptop, or AC power to the laptop, so we're trying to, before we lose the screen. No, I've got a cord. Let's see. It's my son's laptop. Okay. Disaster averted. Anyhow, what we're going to do tonight is introduce two new things to you. One is called Prefurbia, which is a collection of methods that we have developed over the last 20 years to create sustainable land development. We're going to define the sustainability. We're going to introduce kind of a Cliff Note fast version of some of the methods, and then explain how technology has allowed us to create a new era of design opportunities. So when people look at our plans, they don't understand what they're looking at. It's curved streets, it's, looks like a subdivision. By the time we are done with this presentation, you're going to see a lot into the plan as far as details. And I just threw this up as an example. So we're going to get into a kind of a new era of design where it's more systems built. But I just thought I would start with an image. This presentation is custom designed specifically for the Fargo area, because Fargo is one of the few areas in the U.S. that still has a growing economy, still has a market. You're very fortunate. But there's also other unique situations in your development patterns that are less of something to boast about. But first we have to talk about sustainability, because everybody's website. How many consultants do we have here tonight? Okay. Well, if you go to virtually any consultant's website, it says sustainability. But what does that mean? When we look at developments in the U.S., or American standard of living, the UN defines sustainability as people, planet, profit. Oh, that is for third world countries. We're not a third world country, we're an industrial nation. So economics would be not profit, because profit's not sustainable. Profit's what the developer walks away from. But what's that neighborhood going to look like 50 or 100 years from now? And there's certain characteristics we could build into a neighborhood to make it economically viable. So we could build up the character of the neighborhood through design. We could hide the unsightly things like working class vehicles, not in the front yard. We can soften that. We lower the maintenance and lower the energy use of the development itself. And then there's something that we call existence. We call these the 3 E's. Existence is that pride in oneself. Alan, did you want to continue on this? Or once I'm done with this, I'm going to have Alan explain the beginning. Alan Schwartz. Pride in oneself, the individualism. When you take and develop a upper income neighborhood, everybody has a good sense of pride. You're in an upper income neighborhood. You look down the street and everybody's got Mercedes and Cadillacs and stuff. How do you create a sense of pride when the income is on the lower half? When you're in that neighborhood, you feel special. That's what we call existence. It's very easy to do on the upper end. It's very hard to do on the lower end. And then the last thing is the environment. And the environment is the methods that can be used that are economically viable. For example, if we created pervious pavers in a parking lot, but it cost $400,000 more than ponding, what is the economic benefit? And it could make the development uneconomical. So we have to balance all of these. And then I'm going to introduce you to Alan Schwartz, and he'll take it from here for a few minutes.
Thank you, Rick. The next step is we're going to just briefly talk about what are some of the barriers that we run into in sustainability. And one of the first barriers are the regulatory system itself that's in place in the various cities. For example, one of the first things that we do when we're planning a development, because we're going into cities that we don't know a lot of the people, is we look at the purpose and intent that has been drafted by the city government. And in this case, this one is taken from Fredericksburg, Texas, but it tells you, Yep.
Turn the presentation off by hitting that button.
I didn't hit the side button.
That might be the power.
Power wasn't on.
What?
Power was not on till now.
Oh,
There you go.
I plugged it in, but it would have helped if I turned the power on. Sorry. We'll get back to where we were. Yeah.
Yep.
Isn't this wonderful technology? Just to give you, while this is going on, a little bit of history. In 1976, I started a software company. It was called Land Innovation. And we were one of the major players in the engineering and surveying business. Let's see. Okay. You got it. Anyhow, just to make quick, short story quick. We had, by the late 80s, we looked at all this technology and we looked at what our customers were designing, and it was still all this cookie cutter stuff. So we decided to move outside the software business back into the planning business and trying to make a change. What you're seeing tonight is the evolution of those changes. So just wanted to...
All right, to bring you back to the purpose and intent, what we do then is we look at keywords that are in this purpose and intent, and that leads us to know what the city is looking for, their specific goals for growth in their city. And you can see that a lot of them have very significant opportunities here that we can talk about, you know, harmonious development and these kind of things. And this gives us the guide as we're starting to design a project. And then what happens is the planners actually just go to the minimums. And they pull these up, and this is what they use to develop their... I'm sorry? Okay. I'm sorry, get a little closer so they get my volume. And so what ends up happening is instead of using the purpose and intent, they end up just using the minimums, and they design to this. And so this is what happens pretty typically in the developments. And this is the result. You end up with plans where you have exposed rear clutter, you have monotonous development, you have garages that dominate, and this is all because people are designing to the minimums. So these are the barriers to sustain. This is one of the barriers to sustainability. And can any of this satisfy these purposes and intent that the city people designed? The answer is no. You don't get what the government itself has been looking for in their communities. And then they cannot meet the 3 E's either. It ends up having no effect on sustainability. So the results are that you get lower home values because of the monotony, you get the least about marketing advantage, and you have the least stable property values, and so this just leads to unsustainable growth. So what does this all translate to the Fargo area? This is the purpose and intent that we lifted from Fargo, and you can see that it's a line and a half. So what you end up with is developments like this. And you have a lot of garage fronts, and you have a lot of ugly backyards. And we can do better than this, and we're going to talk about how do you do better than this. And the next thing that we're going to talk about is the fact that technology itself, even though we've been advancing in technology, the technology that we have today has been partially to blame for unsustainable developments. And you can go through and see what's happened with technology. In 1975, a Cray Research, which put out the best computer out there, cost $8 million, and today you can get, for $495, you can get an iPad 2 that has more capabilities than that Cray Research computer did. And so the technology itself has changed, but land development has not improved along with that. And what happened is you started getting gains in productivity with land development, and at about 1995, we started seeing it level off, and then it did not follow through with the improvements that you're getting in technology. And the software costs themselves maintained a high level, and yet you would see the performance in this drop off dramatically. So the question is, why can't we do better than this type of design with all the technology? The reason is because technology itself is only used to duplicate minimums. And we have been focusing on speed to turn out the minimums and not sustainable design and filling in the 3 E's that we talked about. So here's an example of some of the major competitors that we have out there talking about the fact that their software will allow you to do up to 250 lots per minute. And unfortunately, when you're doing 4 homes per second, you are not going to get and build in places that are going to develop with the 3 E's where we have sustainability, where we have the built-in values, where people feel good about when they go home, and building in the environmental impact that we can do. I'm going to turn the rest back over to Rick and have him continue the presentation.
Thank you, Alan. So what you're going to be seeing tonight is 35 years worth of technology development and almost 20 years of method development. And we call this Prefurbia, a preferred way to live or preferred way to develop. My wife coined that because the word suburbs means sub or below. It meant actually below the wall of the fortress, because if you lived in the suburbs, you didn't have the protection of the fortress. So we thought we needed to create something a little bit nicer for the suburban development. Now, if you have any urban redevelopment desires, we actually have DVDs here that cover redevelopment. But I know there's most of the development here is suburban. So we came up with this idea about 20 years ago when we sent a newsletter out to a handful of developers and started getting some feedback. And from that, we have